All right, we're here with Congressman Anthony Weiner. First off, I want to start, what's your perspective, your take on the election in one word or as few words as possible so far?
Well, look, it seems to me that you've got the Republicans who think this is a dramatic change election, that this has been the worst 8 years imaginable. And you have Democrats who are trying to decide whether they agree, right? You've got kind of Bernie Sanders people like, we need a revolution, just like the Republicans are saying, although in a different direction. And you've got Hillary basically saying, look, we did pretty well under Democratic presidents, let's keep that going. And that conflict, combined with real craziness that the Trump element has added to it, has made it a very interesting election. Like, are we in a change year? Like, normally you wouldn't think. The economy's doing pretty well, the stock market's rebounded, the country was a real mess in 2007, 2008. Now it's actually doing fairly well.
Right.
But still, by the tenor of the election, you would think this has been the worst period ever. And that is a weird thing to see. Usually there's consensus on whether we're in a change period, and there's really not.
Right. You know, I think we were expecting sort of more excitement on the Republican side, but you referenced how strong Bernie has been so far and how much discontent there has been on the Democratic side. Were you surprised by that? Are you surprised even seeing him last night in Michigan, how strong a campaign he's run?
I have to tell you something. It's been going on for a while. You know, there's been a lot of focus on the Tea Party element in the Republican Party. Our left-wing core is growing and growing and growing, getting more and more pronounced in these primaries. Look, who's the most popular Democrat in America? Liz Warren, who's been in the Senate for half an hour, but she has embodied this sense of outrage and anger and the sense that institutions are not on the level. And so, like, when the two poles of the two parties are tugging pretty far to the extremes. So I think that, to her credit, quietly, while no one was paying much attention, Hillary was organizing in all 50 states. She hasn't taken a dime of general election money, focusing only on the primary. I think they knew something was going to come, and Bernie was the embodiment of it.
Right. Now, so what's your situation? You're obviously with Hillary. Your wife works for Hillary. Yeah. What are sort of the parameters of how you're able to speak about the election and talk about that? You know, because I think the Bernie message is one you're sympathetic to, but your wife works with Hillary. I mean, like, you know, how does that work?
I can speak completely honestly only with Fox 5. Like that, I can just. There's no filter when I talk to you guys because no. I mean, look, I'm not involved in the campaign at all. There's a real firewall in my household. You know, my wife is the vice chair of the campaign, and I'm obviously very connected to the idea that I want them to win. I feel strongly, and I think I would feel this way whether or not I had a family stake in the game, that we are not in this revolutionary moment right now. I think Obama's been an excellent president. I think Bill Clinton was an excellent president. I think Democratic presidents are making progress to making our country better. I have great sympathy for the idea that we need, like, I wanted to go in the Bernie direction during health care, and I advocated very fiercely for a single-payer health care plan. But now that we have Obamacare, the last thing I want to do is join the Republican chorus of saying tear it up and start again.
Right.
And I honor the idea of making progress. And I think that the system, as flawed as it is, still, we need someone in the White House who's got experience. And Hillary, I know it's tough to think of any candidate since George Washington has been more qualified, Secretary of State, Senator, First Lady, and the like. So I feel very strongly Hillary would be a great president, and so I have no compunction about it. But I don't look at Bernie and scratch my head and say, boy, I wonder why he's popular. I completely get it.
What about Donald Trump on the other side? Are you shocked by this whole phenomenon we've seen unfold since he got in the race?
I actually think I'm in the camp that believes there's less to the Trump phenomenon than a lot of people are making. I think that the Republican Party has had this crazy wackadoo wing that's been growing and growing. I think that about a good portion of them are supporting Donald Trump, but it's a sliver of a sliver. Remember, the Republican primary is a relatively tiny percent. Like, you know, we think about places like Iowa, maybe 3 or 4% of the voting age population voted for Trump there. Yesterday, maybe 5 or 6 or 7% of the voting age population voted for Trump. But when you're in a busy primary, 30% is enough to get you wins. I know the Republican Party has lost its moorings. That has been true for a long time. Now the roosters, what's the expression?
Whatever it is, roost or whatever.
Whatever the people in the farm states say.
I mean, do you think it's crazy that Iowa and New Hampshire get such an ability to set the agenda nationally with the primaries and all that?
The problem with the primary system is I can't think of a better one. I mean, I've given this a lot of thought. A lot of people inside of politics have.
Yeah.
What is a better way to do it? If you have big regional elections all at once at the beginning, then whoever has the most money is going to win. You're going to have Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton types every single time. You probably would never have a Barack Obama.
Are you shocked by Jeb Bush's campaign and how that failed to gain any traction?
I am. I bought the. I didn't realize. I knew how unpopular the Bush name was within Democratic circles. I was stunned to find out how damaged the name was among Republicans, and also I wildly overestimated Jeb as a candidate. I kept hearing he was the smart Bush, and he I think that while that may or may not be true, he was not a very good candidate.
Right, and there was a tone that clearly wasn't what Republican primary voters wanted.
Right.
It's getting harder and harder, I think, to strike a general election pose in a primary for Republicans.
And Democrats. It is very, look, the problem is the party selection process are the activists. Activists, by definition, are people who have very strong, extreme kind of views.
Right.
And the challenge is that the Republicans' extreme views are basically who can say more destructive things about the Washington apparatchiks, about the insiders. Democrats at least have a fidelity to the process. They want to get laws passed. They believe more in it. So it's a little easier for us to recover after these primaries. The Republicans have a very difficult time bouncing back whoever their nominee is.
Right. Now, are you shocked by, I'm sure being in New York circles for as long as you have, you've heard things about Trump that you haven't heard mentioned in the campaign. I mean, are you surprised at how Teflon he's been as of yet and how no attacks have stuck? And, I mean, what things have you heard that you can't believe haven't been mentioned by the national press regarding him and his campaign?
Well, the thing that all of us here in New York knows is just about every element of the narrative about Trump isn't true. Successful businessman, not. He's a horrible businessman, one of the worst people in real estate in the city. Basically names things at this point, doesn't build anything. Lost money in casinos when everyone else was gaining money. All the failed businesses. So,
well, he did get. Where did the money come from, though? He has.
Fred Trump. You know, I used to represent Trump Warbass houses in southern Brooklyn. He was a real builder of things. He basically inherited a bunch of money. If you would have inherited what he did and put it in a CD, you would have had more money than Donald Trump in this day. So he's not a great businessman. We also know that this notion, he tells it like it is, well, he's on every side of every issue and clearly doesn't understand a lot of issues. So there's kind of phoniness about it now, but it doesn't seem to matter because, one, his hateful, xenophobic, nationalist language appeals to hateful, xenophobic people in this country. So and that's 20% of the Republican Party, maybe more, right there. So if your contest is only to see who can say the most outrageous things, it's not surprising he's doing well. I am kind of surprised that his opponents haven't realized the way to get under his skin is just to call BS on him being a good businessman. Because that's the thing that really bugs him.
That's what Rubio started to do a week or so ago.
Right.
And it seemed to rankle. What did you think of seeing a sitting U.S. senator sort of get involved in that back and forth about the hand size and everything else?
You know, here's the thing. I understand that Rubio now turned out to have been a bad person to do it, and very often there's a saying in politics, if person A attacks person B, it's person C who benefits.
Sure.
And the problem was, if you recall, for months and months, a lot of us were saying, why doesn't someone punch Trump? Not literally, punch back a little bit.
No one wanted to be the first person to do it.
No one wanted to do it. Then Jeb Bush was doing it. That didn't seem to work. So you can criticize him for the way he did it, and I do think it was unseemly. But if it's too hot, and stay out of Hell's Kitchen or whatever the expression is.
Right. Now it does seem every time it looks like Trump may be losing some elevation. Then you have a night like last night.
Last night I'm not blown away by last night. I think last night has now shown. Now we have 20 states or so, as we sit here, about 20 states. We now don't need a lot of polling. We now kind of can see what's happening in them. He's getting about a third of the Republican primary vote nationally and about a third in most of these primaries. And in some primaries where his opponents are doing different things, he's basically in a three-way going to wind up coasting. The question is, does it stay this 3 or 4 way for long?
Right, and in about a week we're going to know much more about that, right?
Look, I don't think it's the craziest scenario in the world that Trump wins Ohio, wins Florida, Rubio drops out, and Kasich drops out, and then it's head-to-head with Cruz, and Cruz starts beating him. I don't think that's an impossible. So who even knows? I mean, I'm of the belief that he does not represent the majority even of the crazy Republican Party. But I don't know. I mean, in fairness, I don't know what I'm rooting for, because Cruz is the House of Pain too. He's no great candidate.
Right.
For
Well, I mean, He didn't expect to be outflanked on his right. Certainly, he was always making sure there's no room on that edge of things. what do you think is the better of those two scenarios for the establishment Republican?
I don't know. They're in trouble. They're two terrible candidates. Trump and Cruz are probably if you took that panoply of 17 candidates to start, they've probably been left with the two worst general election candidates they could have chosen.
It would seem like Donald Trump would be the stronger of the two in a general election. Does he put states in play that aren't normally in play?
It's a 50-state landslide for the Democrats, and I'll tell you why.
If Trump's the nominee.
Yeah, because the types of people that are voting in these swing states, and even the non-swing states, in presidential general election years, the more casual voter, the more moderate voter, the one who looks up from their newspaper a couple of times a year and says, all right, what is the political choice I have? They're not crazy. They're not going to risk their country by they're not Trump lunatics. They're not people who believe in walls and believe in throwing people out of the country.
But are people energized that wouldn't normally vote in a way?
Yes,
more than Republicans, you think?
Sure. I mean, you look at Republicans right now. About 60% of Republicans saying they wouldn't vote for Trump under any circumstance.
Do you believe that, though? Do you think push comes to shove, they'll sit out?
No, I think a lot of them will vote for Hillary.
You do?
Yeah, I think a lot of them vote for Hillary. You remember, look, Hillary Clinton's gotten beaten up a lot in the course of these elections. She was the most popular Clinton for a while. I mean, when she was the Secretary of State, she had favorables in the 70s.
Right.
People will be reminded at some point that she's a very qualified person. She's not an extremist. She's someone who believes in progress. But all that being said, Donald Trump does not represent where mainstream America, I believe, does not represent where mainstream America is. And we see this rise of xenophobia in other countries and other places. Le Pen looked like a shoo-in, and then what happened? People start actually voting.
Right, they sort of got energized real quick. Yeah. It's comedian Sarah Silverman says something which I tend to subscribe to, the idea that politics is like Red Sox, Yankees, or whatever, and people don't switch teams. So whenever I hear people say that, I think a Republican would vote for Hillary rather than Donald, I'm always skeptical of that.
Yeah, but the problem is, you're missing something. If you're going to use that metaphor, then you've got to talk about the Brooklyn Dodgers, because people are fewer Brooklyn Dodgers fans each and every year. There are fewer Republicans, fewer Democrats. The single largest growth are non-affiliated.
Right.
All these people that are coming out for Bernie Sanders, for example, a lot of them weren't registered Democrats until the moment they stepped in the booth this time. So independent voters, if you look at
that's right. There's more of them than Democrats or Republicans.
And the fewer people who are feeling, even the people. That's what we're seeing with the Trump phenomenon. People are saying, I can't believe Republicans are voting for Trump. Well, today's Republican Party is an amalgam of all kinds of, it's like a cocktail of all different types of influences. It's not your grandpa's Republican Party. And to be honest, our party's kind of similar, that our party's changing right before ours. So the idea that a swing voter would not cast a vote for Hillary Clinton, I believe, is wrong. Believe me, look, the problem that we have, and it's a weird dynamic, presidential election years come down to the least informed, most casual voters. Right. These are the people that only come
on the World Series, these aren't people watching in April, but...
Exactly. So when you're going to be watching who's going to win Ohio, or who's going to win Pennsylvania, who's going to win Florida, those swing voters at 10, 20, 15% are going to, I think, tip to the Democratic side in large numbers. And of that 15%, if 80% are going for Hillary, it's a landslide.
What do you think about, it seems like there's been a lot of unintended consequences in this race, particularly Citizens United, which theoretically would unleash a lot of money and sort of allow moneyed interest to pick a candidate, and instead it gave rise to Trump in a weird way. I mean, are you surprised?
It's a weird year. It's a very weird year that, yes, is an enormous number of super PACs influencing the process.
But having less influence than ever in a weird way.
Well, and also you've got the single most successful candidate fundraising in American history is Bernie Sanders.
Small money, right.
Small money. And so what's happening? I don't know what's happening, to be honest with you. I still believe, obviously, the influence of super PACs is a pernicious one, but they're not winning the day. I mean, getting back to Trump for a moment, he's also lying about being a self-funder. He's raising money too and selling hats online and lending campaigns. So I think there's still an influence of money, but it's actually...
That's generally true, though, right? I mean, compared to someone, the people he's running against.
No. He every dollar he's put in so far, he's lent to the campaign, meaning he's going to raise money to
get it back.
And it was recently reported, I think, in the Wall Street Journal. He says if he makes the general election, he's going to raise money like everyone else. He's a complete utter phony. He's not even giving money to his campaign; he's lending it. So every dollar, you go to his website right now. There's a big donate button. He's just making it up. He's getting away with it too.
how do you envision it all playing out? Where are we a month from now? And then, you know.
I was on the Bush bandwagon.
Where were you? Yeah.
I then, until like about an hour ago, still was on the Rubio bandwagon. So I am not. The one thing I think that I still continue to believe is that that Trump does not become the nominee. I do still believe that. I mean, because I just believe that as it becomes a choice of a 1 or 2 person race, even in places like New York or California where you think Cruz wouldn't do well, I still think they're not going to choose Donald Trump.
And there's a lot of talking about the slow bleed strategy, about just sort of keeping him from getting the. I mean, is this going to be the contested convention that everyone's been loving to talk about?
I think there's a good chance that Trump doesn't get the full number of delegates that he needs. I don't know. I can't believe that we Democrats are that lucky, or that the Republican Party is in that much of a mess. I guess I can't believe it. But I might be the last one who doesn't think that Trump's going to get the nomination.
Yeah.
And I think that Hillary's going to be our nominee, and I think that this thing could go 50 states because Bernie's got a bunch of money and it keeps coming in, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world either.
Right. That seems to be the sort of the super PAC element of that, is that the campaigns live on beyond the candidates. Sometimes they drop out, you know, and the money just keeps the thing alive.
Well, no, I just think that Bernie is raising enough money to keep being competitive in these races. Like, he outspent by $25 million in Michigan. They dumped. I mean, one of the reasons this thing got very close and that Bernie wound up winning is that Bernie spent a ton of money and Hillary actually didn't. They didn't have a great ground operation there either. So all of that being said, I don't think the race going on a long time is necessarily bad. It turned out to be helpful for Barack Obama in 2008.
You think it might be the same deal this time around?
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly got more competitive than I think Hillary ever thought it might.
Yes and
right?
no, but I got to tell you, I mean, you know, you can go back and see them opening campaign offices in June states back in August of last year. Like, they thought they were going to have a 50-state thing. They didn't know who the person was going to be. But if you're even a casual observer of what's going on in the Democratic Party, someone out, you know, O'Malley thought it might be him.
Right.
Who knows if, you know, if someone like Liz Warren or someone else decided to get in, someone was going to be the voice of that disaffection, or whatever the word language is you want. And Bernie's, in a way, an ironic fit for it, being this kind of unusual-looking guy who's from
Democratic
Brooklyn.
socialist from Vermont, the whole thing.
Right.
What percentage do you think you would put it at? Hillary, some sort of the FBI email thing becomes a real issue.
I know the Republicans are trying everything possible. They've succeeded in that. I bet if I asked you, as a guy who reads the stuff a lot, to describe it in a couple of sentences, you'd probably get it wrong because it's been so conflated at this point. There's 35,000 some odd emails that have now been dumped into the public domain, more than any other candidate in history has ever put out, more than Cruz or Trump ever will. I think the Republicans will keep trying to make it an issue, but they're going to ultimately fail because there's not a there. This is all spiraling from this weird circumstance of Hillary making all of these emails public, and so now there's a lot of fodder.
The core issue, though, isn't it that she set up that server at her home, which looked weird. You know, I mean, like it was sort of trying to get around the Freedom of Information Act.
No, that's there. You've done it now. No, there wasn't an enormous amount of thought, and none of the documents that have been revealed, and these emails have all come out that discuss this. This wasn't this question of like getting around Freedom of Information Act or anything else. It was a server that was in use, that she kept in use from her old campaign when she left the private sector and went into the public sector. No different than having a Yahoo address or a Google address, which, by the way, her predecessors had. So it's no different. And by the way, how often the IRS has been hacked, OPM has been hacked, the State Department has been hacked, the White House has been hacked. This whole idea, and her thing was not. So this whole idea that somehow and there was no classified information that was sent to her on that server. So there's nothing to this. There is this conversation going on within government now that a former Secretary of State from a couple of years ago decided to dump all these emails into the public domain, how much after the fact these agencies like the NSA and the FBI and the CIA, who are all going through all this stuff, believe should be allowed into the public domain. That's their problem. That has nothing to do with Hillary and doesn't have a great deal to do with anyone else. And if they want to go and say Colin Powell shouldn't have had a private server and Connie Rice shouldn't have had private email addresses and that Hillary Clinton, that's fine. They can go back and retroactively change the law, and they actually have now made some changes. But this doesn't, I mean, there's no scandal, there's no thing there beyond that. But if you want to make something of it, the Republicans are going to keep trying.
Tell me, just to end off here, it's something people don't know enough about, or you think that's going to be sort of a big issue in the campaign going forward that we're not hearing enough about?
Well, I think what's going to happen is at some point, President Obama is going to get off the sidelines and want to be involved in this debate about whether these last 8 years have been bad or not. And I think he's going to be a pretty influential person out there in the campaign. He's kind of like, he's been staying on the sidelines because there's a Democratic primary going on. But implicit in a lot of the conversation is the last 8 years, where the number of uninsured people is dramatically lower. The number of unemployed people is dramatically lower. The longest sustained job growth since the Clinton era, after years of job losses under Bush. That just about every indicator, Wall Street indices, balance of trade, the number of terrorists we've killed, just about every indicator, I think, shows that he's been an excellent president. What's going to happen here eventually is he's going to get off the sidelines and say, I'm no longer going to sit while you guys bat around the idea that I've been a good president. And that's a pretty big bully pulpit, and I think that he's going to be a very good person to remind people where we were the last time the Republicans ran the show.
Yeah, and I mean, does it hurt you to be on the sidelines right now? I see in your Twitter you are very supportive of Bill de Blasio as mayor. What are your thoughts on his term so far? And that was a role you ran for.
I think the mayor's done a very good job, and I try to do everything I can to be helpful. One of the things in addition to truly believing it, one of the things that I never liked is losing candidates who carp for years after, at the guy who won. I want him to be a success. I love this city. I think he's done an excellent job. I think his signature things that he's done, which could have gone wrong in 1,000 ways, like universal pre-K could have gone wrong in 1,000 different ways, and it went off seamlessly. I think the way that he's kept an eye on, my one beef with him, as I've written about in my column in the Daily News and elsewhere, is I thought his dalliances in the national politics weren't particularly helpful to anybody, including him. He's taken every word of advice that people have given him. He's doing town hall meetings. He's been an excellent mayor, and I think that he deserves that credit.